Welcome to the City Cross Lake Wednesday, August 25th Budget Workshop. Call the meeting to order. Mike.
All right, thank you. So if you look on the agenda here, let's keep in mind, this is not on the agenda, but let's keep in mind we have a public hearing at 5. So let's try to be efficient today, and hopefully we can get a break before that meeting. But before we get into the packet all of you have that came out last Thursday, let's talk a little bit about some challenges we have for the budget for next year. We've got some staffing levels to discuss, capital project funding, debt service levies. We'll get to the draft of the budget proposal, and then we'll adjourn. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is current staffing levels. Right now, the city has 18 full-time staff. We all know who they are and what they do. We've had some staffing changes as early as yesterday, as late as yesterday. And so I'm going to ask Eric Lee to come up and talk about that. And then if Chip Lohmiller comes, we'll have him talk a little bit too. So with that, let's go ahead, Chief Lee.
Sorry, I got a late notice on this. It was yesterday, so just kind of reviewing and going through thoughts. Did you need one, Mike? No. I'll put one up here. So a couple different things I emailed all of you yesterday. I hope you all received it regarding Sergeant Swanson putting in his resignation notice. And last shift will be Tuesday, August 31st. So a couple of things that I'd like to do is right now I'd request from you to move Adam Casanova to a permanent full-time position with a 6-month probationary period. Adam has proven himself in the last month and a half as being a very qualified and responsible officer. That's one of the things that I would like you to take a look at and if you want, discuss. The other thing, knowing that I'm going to lose Sergeant Swanson next week, I'd like to move Jake Meyer to interim sergeant September 1st, and we'd have to discuss compensation and the timeline to interview prospective sergeants and who will do the interview. Whether it's I know Mayor Nevin has wanted the Public Safety Committee to be responsible for it, but as of right now, the Personnel Committee is responsible for personnel. The other thing is to replace an open position in October through the part-time officer pool. We've got some qualified part-time officers that are qualified that can move up into a full-time position without any additional training. They'll be ready to roll. Fourth is to hire Cody Haynes as a part-time officer pending background investigation, physical and psychological evaluations. Cody is a resident of town. His mom is part of the ambulance service and has been for years. Cody has ridden I don't know how many hours with my officers, and they are very impressed with him and his abilities. Cody's past has been, he's been a manager down at Mills Fleet Farm, and currently he's working security for the hospital. I'll use existing part-time officers to fill shifts due to vacation, training, sick from my pool of part-time officers. So what I'm saying is we won't refill that position until October, and sometime in October maybe. Probably looking at something around the meeting time. I'll bring a recommendation forward. And then lastly, I'd like to research hiring an administrative assistant. I haven't even talked to Chip about this, or really John, but potentially sharing a position between the 3 departments, 2 departments, whatever it might be, to get more presence at that window. The police window, that is probably one of the biggest complaints that I hear when people call in during the week or come in during the week. The door is not open, there's nobody there, nobody answers the phone. And in addition to that being a big complaint, I'm inundated right now with administrative crud, paperwork, pushing, videos and paper through different places, and it's not getting me out on the street as much as I should be. So those are the things that I'd like to talk about.
Okay, let's start with number 1, Eric. Adam Casanova, how long has he been part-time?
About 6 weeks.
And when we took him on as part-time, was that for a 6-month period, or did we state at that time?
No, there was no set period.
So he would go to probation at this point?
Right. When we hired him, we brought him in knowing his training, knowing his background with another department, and he could transition into full-time fairly easy.
Okay, so it'd be full-time and...
Right. And as of right now, I have no other part-timers who can or want full-time.
And Adam came from Pequot?
Pequot.
Is that true? I gotta ask, what is the urgency to go to full-time right away? Is there an urgency for it?
Well, he's putting in the time, and it gives the department a little continuity with having 6 full-time officers. Right now, as of Tuesday, we'll be down to 5 full-time officers, or 4 if we don't put Adam on full-time. So, I can make an officer who's full-time work. A part-time officer, I'm having a little more difficult time saying, get in here.
How many hours are they typically working, the part-timers?
All the part-timers?
Yeah.
None.
Oh.
I've had, I'm trying to think, maybe 40 hours this year, maybe at most 60 hours of use of part-time. When we hired the 6th full-timer, we no longer needed that pool, and we were finding that part-time officers weren't as willing to take their day off because they're full-time elsewhere and come here work for their wage here.
But Adam has been working how many hours now the last 2 months?
He's been averaging close to 40 hours a week, if not 40. So we're going to get to the point where he's going to be 1,040 hours, and we're going to, at that point, have to pay him benefits.
Well, I don't think we noticed that we were going to hire anybody for this meeting. This meeting was noticed as a budget meeting, so is it possible to keep him on as a part-time officer until the regular meeting?
We can do that with everything.
Okay.
Pequot right now is potentially looking, and he's still part-time with Pequot. He could be potentially taken away from us.
Yeah, but it wasn't
Well,
noticed for this meeting.
I
so-
understand that, and either was a resignation yesterday. So I'm working with what I have.
But actually, you got quite a few things here that isn't legal for us to be talking about it.
No,
I mean,
It's not.
This wasn't posted. There's a lot
Okay.
of stuff here. Hiring an administrative assistant, I mean, there's a lot of things.
Well, I'm
piled
not
up.
asking to hire an administrative assistant right now. I'm asking for a discussion in the budget process to do that. That's for 2022, as you see in
But
the
is this
notice.
the meeting that we should be talking about that?
This isn't a meeting that I should talk about the budget for 2022?
It is.
Hiring a position?
the administrative assistant for 2022 is fine because that's a budget item, but the rest of the stuff, moving Jake Meyer to interim sergeant and hiring Adam
Okay.
Casanova for full-time isn't.
I mean, maybe we should call a special meeting or something to do it so it's posted.
If you want to get this done quickly, you could call an emergency meeting. I mean, if it needs to be done right away.
I don't
Or a
think it would be.
special meeting in 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Would it be difficult to just carry on with part-time
I
officers
can do
for a week?
whatever the council wishes.
Okay.
It,
On September
it's a pain
3rd,
in
are
my
we
butt,
meeting?
but it's what I get paid for, I guess.
September 3rd, aren't we meeting?
All right. Tuesday.
But your
Yeah,
part,
I won't have, come Labor Day weekend, we're gonna be,
but
yeah.
you just said your part-time officers aren't getting any hours.
I said my part-time
Right.
officers can and hopefully will backfill
Yeah.
positions, but necessarily getting them to do so is not necessarily the case.
the thing I want to be careful of, Eric, is we're filling a full-time position that historically has gone for 20 years, and I don't want to do it in a panic. I mean, I
Okay.
think we should look at it.
And we can promote from within without having to notice any, open up an application process. And we have, other than Officer Lane, that's what we've done in the past, so,
Yeah.
and that's time and money otherwise.
I had asked the question, when is the next available meeting when we can discuss all this? You have it posted and discuss it.
You
be
have
done.
a special meeting,
Next week.
September 3rd.
Okay, September 3rd. Do we have time to post it, to discuss this? at that-
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, why don't we do that, Dave?
Okay. So,
Why don't we'll post it for September 3rd, and we'll get it discussed, okay?
Okay, for budget considerations, we will take a look at number 6, though. And
Oh,
have a
that'll be-
discussion between,
Yeah, I already
today.
had that on my list to discuss today.
all right, thank you.
I had you and Chip on there both. That's scary.
So just for clarification, are we having a special meeting on the 3rd to discuss this?
We'll add it to that meeting.
Okay.
There's already a meeting scheduled. We have 3 days we
Yep.
can add.
Yep, and so in the meantime, Eric, Char and I will both work with you with the salary recommendation for both of those, so we can address that at the same time.
Please.
Okay, so in my opening comments, the second thing I had, and Chip was still on his way here, talking about staffing levels for the fire department and related compensation, right? And one of the items we wanted to talk about during the budgeting process, which we can talk about because it's for a 2022 budget, is looking at the duties of the fire chief and whether or not it makes sense to adjust that relationship. So go ahead, Chip.
Well, first we can talk about the compensation of the firefighter membership. I think at the Personnel Committee, I wasn't there at the last meeting, but it was discussed to raise the hourly wage from $15 to $20 to be more consistent with the other departments in the area.
Public safety.
Sorry, public safety meeting. Sorry, my mind's somewhere else right now. And then also increasing the duty crew stipend, monthly stipend from $30 to $60. We would probably increase the budget, I mean, we can't put a number on it, but between $25,000 and $35,000 for the payroll hourly wage. All depends on call volume. Right now, we're sitting at 304 calls as of today. That is 74 calls ahead of last year. So if we keep going, we'll probably be at about 500 calls, possibly, which will be 160 more than last year. So just a lot of time. The other reason for going up to $20, if you think about a lot of the calls are medicals, probably 73%, and the individuals drive their own vehicle. And if you start counting mileage, if somebody wants to turn in a mileage report, it'd probably be pretty high.
do they do that? Don't
No.
they do that?
No, they don't turn any wear and tear or mileage.
Why not? Has that
If you
been,
want to do that, we could.
well, has it been brought up? I can't believe
They
it
ask
hasn't
about
been.
it, they talk about it, somehow they have to be compensated for their vehicle. I mean, when we run out to Bonnie Lakes, that's 20 miles.
Yeah.
20 miles, we've had a lot of calls out there, so it'll start going up pretty high, pretty fast.
So how do we say that if we raise the hourly and the monthly, what'd you call it?
It's called duty crew. We have 2 members on call from 9 PM to 6 AM, and those are the only 2 that go on the medicals during that period of time. So we don't have too many people going to calls during
And you wanted to raise it from 40 to 60 a
30
month?
to 60.
30 to 60. So how can we do that so that that increase is covering their vehicle use?
Well, I think the 15 to 20, I think they'd be happy with that. I mean, I don't think there's any way to, unless you have them keep a log of their mileage, that would be a real tough thing to do.
Well, right, but I mean, can we just make them, let them know that that's part of what the increase is? To cover, realizing that they've got an expense?
Yeah, you could say that to help compensate for fuel.
Because the next thing that'll come around is they want the mileage increase, right?
It's either that or you buy a whole bunch of duty crew cars. That's another option.
Well, I'm not opposed to it at all, Chip, but
Yeah.
I think we should word it,
Yeah, there's gotta.
Properly, so that-
We just have to make sure that they're happy with compensation and that covers everything that
the
they need.
intent,
Yep.
yeah.
So just for the council's information, when we did the budget amendments back in July, we did adjust the budget for the fire department to try to adjust the amount we, Chip expected to spend under the current arrangement to get us through the end of the year. And then what we did is we took that number and said, okay, what's a good estimate for going into 2022 if these recommendations are put into place? So that's reflected in the budget proposal on item number 3 in your budget draft we're talking about later. And we'll adjust that whichever way we need to with what you come up with, okay?
So Chip, I'm sorry, you said that would raise the budget by $3,500 approximately?
25,000 to 35,000.
okay.
That's just for the hourly raise increase. To increase the duty crew stipend, it would increase the budget $8,260. So we have 23 firefighters that are on duty crew times 365 days, or 12 months times 2, you get that number.
So we're talking roughly $40,000. I'm just using a round number.
Yep. Yeah, but then again, if we have a normal year of 380 calls, it'll be on the lower end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that should be figured into the budget. That's my personal feeling.
So it's a range that you have.
Yeah, because it all depends on how many calls we go on, yep.
Yep.
If we have a whole bunch of fire calls, that's more hours, more guys. Blow it up.
Do you know if it's equivalent or matches any of the other fire stations? Do they do this?
Yeah,
Are we comparing this today?
I don't have it with me, but I gave a sheet to the Public Safety Committee, and that's right in line. You got 25 at some, 18, 22, it varies, yeah.
It's $1 or $2 higher than some, and it's more than $1 or $2 lower than others.
Yeah,
So it's in the plateau with it, from what I read.
Chip, have you ever done an exercise looking at the fire calls, all calls over the last 20 years, what they've done?
yeah, I have that in my annual report. It shows the last 10 years. So if you go back to I don't know, maybe 2009, we ran 146 calls, I believe. So 11 years ago, we were only at 140, and we went up to 390 in 17, I believe. And then we dropped down because of COVID last year to 364. But I'm sure this year we're going to be 450.
You've never gone back 20 years and looked at it?
There's no accurate information 20 years ago. I think 2004 or 5 is probably the earliest I can find.
The reason for the question is I'm just kind of graphing things,
Yeah, it's like this.
And where's it going to go in the next 10 years?
If
Are
people
we
keep
gonna-
moving up here, it'll probably plateau at 500 to 600 calls maybe. people are moving up here left and right, so.
Our census is already outdated.
Right, right before COVID, yeah. So I think when I joined in 97, we ran like 84 calls, something like that. Does that sound right? That's when you came on. Yeah, it was something like that.
And you had 20 people on the force at the time?
24, I
And
think.
now you've got 28?
We have 27, but 3 of those are only EMS, so we only have 24.
So the force hasn't changed a whole lot. Certainly not with the graph.
Do you feel the added income benefit might help that?
Well, like I've said before, it's hard to recruit firefighters here in this area because there's not very many young people moving to our area because there's nowhere to live.
Yeah.
So I don't think most firefighters join because they want to serve the community. It's not the money. But it does help when they have to leave their job or if they have a call over a weekend, or a lot of my firefighters are self-employed, so getting something while they're taken away from their own job is definitely worth it. But, you know, some of the guys I'm afraid might get burnt out, so I'm a little worried about that. I have some guys that make almost every call, and they're young, so I don't want to get them burned out. But I think we have 3, right now I know we have 1 for sure retiring, maybe 2, maybe 4. They haven't told me yet, but I know I have 3 recruits that are interested right now to join. But if we lose those and I don't get anybody, we're gonna be a little
Chip,
tired.
didn't we give the guys a little bit of a boost in the last year or so?
I think it was what, 18, 17, 18?
Was that the last time?
We went from 12 to 15. Yeah,
I could be thinking of something different too.
and
but-
before that, it was $10 flat rate, which is pretty much the same thing, except for training. Training, we got 15.
So Aaron, was that a motion that you made to support the increase?
Yes. I'll make it as a motion.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on it? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? You got it.
Okay, you gonna go to that, Eric? Okay. We have a call. The next thing, you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, the next thing I'd ask Chip to talk about is, you know, when do we get to the size or volume where it makes sense to not have a paid-on-call fire chief? Which means you would have some type of arrangement for EMS, public safety, EMS-type director that's also serves the role as a fire chief. Now, some communities have full-time fire
Emergency
chiefs.
management.
Emergency management is what I'm trying to say. And then we need to be thinking of the future. At what point do we get to where we have a building code? And at what point does the city get to where we would have required inspections for the VRBOs that are in town? And someone has to do that.
Yeah, just to overview a little bit, some of the departments that Mike's talking about, like Pine City has a 30-hour-a-week full-time position for a fire chief, Zimmerman, Princeton, Isanti, and they all run about the same amount of calls, or just a little bit under, actually. My job, as Eric said about administration, I have a lot of paperwork to do. Every call I have to do, INFRS report, takes a lot of time. Yes, I'm getting compensated for so many hours a month, but my hours are way above that compensation. If you divide that by 15, and the hours that I put in is way over that, along with all the hose testing, SCBA testing, pump testing, hydro testing, and then inspections. Can you come look at this? So it takes a lot of time. So the other thing is, which would benefit the city if we do take on some of this VRBO inspections, that's something the fire chief can do. That's what a lot of people have been transitioning into. But the building code is one of the biggest things that having a fire marshal / chief inspections would be a good thing for this city. That's just my opinion, because we have some of the biggest houses in the county and we don't follow that, whereas Breezy Point and everybody else is. Pequot and Breezy are considering a fire district, looking at a fire chief and a fire marshal to do inspections over there and following the state building code. So their councils have been talking about that the last couple months. So it's just something to think about. Lucky that I have a job that I can work whenever I want on my side, because right now on our staff, I can guarantee you there's not one person on our staff that could do what I'm doing right now. So preparing for the future would be good, because I don't know how long I'm gonna be here either.
Chip, how do you overlap the fire marshal, fire chief with the building?
We do inspections, so like when we talked, when the county was here, there's life safety in these buildings, so fire extinguishers, egress, that's also part of building code along with sheetrock, firewalls, all that. I mean, it's all ties in together. Like out down Elk River, their building inspectors are fire marshals. So that's who inspects their housing, is the fire marshals. And then in Brainerd, they have a fire marshal full-time, that he does all the inspections for the schools, the nursing homes, restaurants, liquor stores, businesses. I mean, I go down to like, what are those places that have all the clothes, the Goodwill, and I have to inspect those to make sure their egress doors are open and people can get out. So there's a lot of things that I do that you don't know about. You know, like pyrotechnician, when they had the concert across the street, I had to check their stuff before they could even do the concert. I had to sign off on it through the state fire marshal. So there's a lot of things you can do.
Who picks up your liability when you sign off on something like that? Is that
City.
the city does?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, if I have to go work with John or get more certificates or whatever, that's easy to get.
I'm assuming you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I just think,
Is this something, Mike, that we should be starting to do research and get some information, knowledge, figures in on?
I think it'd be a good idea to understand what that would entail and what it would cost. Right now, I have not built that into the budget, but we're talking about things that we need to be planning for, that we can make decisions today that'll impact future years. We should start thinking about those things.
John, what is your feeling on the building inspections and stuff?
I think a good transition to start it is with the VRBOs and doing the inspections on each one of those. And then I certainly don't have any problem with sharing that information on the permitting process that we have for him to go out and do the part that he would need to do. You know, I think it's going to be a transition, but.
Yeah, because there's some of these houses that are being built that I have to inspect, like the one on Perkins Road.
That new one?
I've been there 4 or 5 times
Yeah.
already. So there's
But you're inspecting on a fire basis?
fire bases right now, but it could be building as well.
But if you start inspecting building-wise, you need to be certified as a
Correct.
building inspector.
Yep, yep.
What would you have to do to
I'd
jump, what
have to
hoops
go
would
to-
you have to do to jump?
I think there's some
Yeah, there's some
things,
classes and
there's
things. And, yeah,
quite a
just
few
like-
things you have to do.
Yeah, there's just like fire inspection and fire marshal and same type of thing.
Don't you even have to have some construction background too?
I have construction background, yeah.
You do? Okay.
But, yeah, I like John's idea about the VRBO, because
Phasing
that's
it
gonna
in.
be that's gonna be a lot of inspections in
The
itself.
VRBO would be a good thing to jump right on.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's
Just a
talk
thought.
about that for a second. I've got a few thoughts about that. The county does not seem to want to share their licensing fee with us. Initially, at least that's their initial reaction. But the city of Cross Lake can be stricter than the county. So we could implement a fine or a penalty for not registering. Right? If we catch one that is
I think so.
operating
If you have a
as a
statute.
VRBO and they're not registered, the city could put a fine. I believe there's a way that we could do that.
Are you
And-
you talking about an administrative fine?
Yeah, whatever, you know.
Well, it's just, for example, when they license with the city of Cross Lake, get registered, you can charge them $50, $100, whatever it is, on top of the county. Go inspect it, you do it every 3, 4 years. And I've talked to, who was the chair of the VRBO committee?
Diane,
Was it Diane?
I think so.
No.
No,
No, it was,
Dan?
the,
Deanne Furin.
Yeah, Tim.
She
wasn't it?
thought maybe 4 years and But it's usually 3, because if there's any changes, hopefully if they.
Oh,
get a
you mean the
permit-
inspection,
the
re-inspection
inspection.
in 4 years?
I mean, initial inspection, then it has to be looked at again. Just like, you know, hotels and everybody else need to be looked at again, because things change.
Whatever that works out to be, but the bottom line is to get people to sign up. Get people to legitimize the business that they're running.
Well, you have to put that in statute, don't you? If you don't sign up, you can be fined so much amount or whatever, and then it would go off your taxes if you don't pay it, right?
Yeah, well, there's a way to do that, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
I think the fine should be significant.
Oh, yeah.
Like $5,000 for the first time.
Whatever you all
That's
think.
gonna get some real attention,
Oh, yeah,
plus it'll give us a little revenue to work with.
yeah.
Well, the
Because-
way that our administrative fines are set up right now is it's $75 per violation
Well,
per day.
I know.
Per
that,
day.
But this
And
is
that's
gonna
the
be different.
Yeah.
We're gonna have
Yeah,
to
but
set
per
this
day,
up
though, is the
different.
big thing.
But if they don't register it, then you could get them for failure to register, failure to have septic service inspection. There could be multiple is what I'm
And
getting
it's
at.
per day.
Yeah.
So
per
you
day
could end
adds
up
up
with
fast.
$300-400 a day worth of fines. That's what happened with,
They had
With,
13 violations for 29 days.
yeah.
Yeah, and that was significant, but whatever, if that's a good way, if it was $5,000 if we get caught doing it without a license, that would get their attention too. But maybe we can't do that.
But I think a
don't know.
working group on how we can implement cities' statutes on VRBO would be, I don't think you want to follow the county.
No.
In
Well-
2022.
We still have a committee working on this?
No, it's kind of laid down for the county to see how they did for the first year.
Yeah, and that committee, I asked to be invited to that over and over again, and they never included me on it.
Why?
And you won't
I
be.
don't,
You won't be
I won't
either,
be because
Chuck.
they know I'm gonna inspect them.
But can't we make,
Did you ever ask me?
Well, I talked to Deanna, I said, hey, and I know her, obviously, and I'm like, can you send me an email when you have your meeting? And I never got anything,
Oh,
so.
I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I wouldn't be invited because of my inspections, but,
But I would be in favor of let's investigate this, let's follow up on it, and you've got a multiple end, he has multiple ends. Why don't you pull the two together so we can see a package and
I
include.
think
jobs
once we
can
open
do.
the floodgates on having something done about VRBOs, because I put a little ad in the paper, and last night I was up till 8:30, I probably took 10 phone calls
well, I'm sure.
about them.
Well,
So
they're
there's a
scared.
lot of people out there that are upset about it.
Yeah,
I live on a road with about 8 houses on it. 5 of them are
I've
VRBOs.
got 5 down the street from me.
So the point of it is, I would like to act fast on this.
Yes.
Whatever it is, inspections, sewers, parking, put the enforcement in and stop. But we're at the end of the season now.
Yes and no.
Yeah, that's true. But, so how do we do that?
Well, you have to get it all passed, I have no idea, that's,
but on these inspections, can't we make
have
it
to-
mandatory that they have an inspection
Yes.
before they get the license?
correct.
Charge them for the inspection,
Correct.
whatever it costs us to have that
Correct.
inspector go out. And they have to pay for that inspection.
Yeah,
That
and I
would-
think I
Oh.
that
sent
would
you a
help.
copy of like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, or some, I think it was a couple weeks ago, I sent a couple of you samples of, I think it was Idaho or Colorado, how they do it. And it's simple, but they can't get their license till it's inspected.
So I
We
did,
help them,
And even with like the state building code, there's fees for to get the permits that we couldn't pass along a percentage of
Right.
those permit fees to whoever's inspecting.
correct.
I don't know.
So that we can get through the budget, can we have a special meeting just for Verbo? Because we burned up 35 minutes and we're wandering. No, it's a good topic, but I think there's,
let me just add one more thing that's just real quick, because I did have a conversation with Bill Brecken yesterday. We did get the county's attention when we had that little meeting with them, and he told me in the next week or so, they're gonna come back in. They wanna meet with us and develop the plan, so
That's
that'd be a good time to at
Yeah.
least start it.
For sure.
Include Eric's number 6 in there with the administrative assistant.
Yeah, I mean,
thing.
that's, administration is a lot. Actually, right now, I hire somebody to do some of our Target Solutions data entry because I don't have time to do it.
Well, it might be a good time to formally
Yeah.
incorporate and look at the multiple use that could come from it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on item 2B, capital funding. When we look at capital funding, we really have three ways to pay for capital. We can borrow money, we can issue money, and we can issue debt. We can use money we have, or we can, hopefully someone is generous and donates us money. So when you look at, one of the questions I get, with these two large projects we've just completed, the city hall and the fire hall, is those were in part funded by the proceeds of the sale of the phone company. Now, if you remember when we sold the phone company had cash in their bank, which we transferred to the city's bank account, and then we sold the phone company. So when that transaction was completed, now this has not been adjusted for any interest earnings, we ended up with about $5.7 million, $5,689,339. We didn't really do anything with that money in 2017. In 2018, remember, we used a portion of it to pay for the sewer plant improvements. 2019, we're still in the process of planning for the city hall and the fire hall remodeling. 2020, fire hall remodeling costs, we had a budget of $1.4 million, which we used for that. We put another $600,000 in there to get us through, this is on a cash basis, by the way, through 2021. And when I did this here about a month ago, I was estimating when these projects are done, we'll have about $2,155,000 left of the money we had realized from the phone company. And the reason that number is important, because it really impacts what we're going to talk about in the budget, and then when we get to item C on debt service levies. So with the capital project funding, Ted's here to talk a little bit about some of the most recent projects. And then just to kind of give everybody, this is your official heads up, that remember the building that the Public Works facility is in, that whole place down there, those were issued through the EDA, through kind of a unique funding arrangement where the city owns the property through the EDA, and we lease a portion of that building to the county. Now, Ted and I spoke with the county, John Melson, was that Tuesday or Monday? He had stopped by just to introduce himself. He's the new facilities person at the county. And we started talking about what his thoughts were on space needs and what the county is looking at and what we're looking at in the future. And if you remember when we did the longer-term budget, Ted had identified in there in 2023-24 some storage concerns. And so the reason this is important today is because that lease agreement is up for renewal or discussion in 2023, and we'll need to decide what to do. We can start thinking about today through our budgeting process to decide what to do in 2023-24 when that lease is up for renewal. So go ahead, Ted.
In that long-term plan 2023, which is the fall of 23, we've got 1.875 in the garage storage and another $2.7 million in cold storage space that was identified as needs between the county and Public Works. One of the things I suggested to Mike was, with the agreement coming and sunsetting, essentially, there's parts of the agreement that could be, the city could buy the county's share of the building out, and then we'd have enough building, we wouldn't have to do about $4 million worth of projects. The county could move to another site, build their own site. That's what the money they would get from us, they could use for that. Another thing that's probably the biggest one, is the needs of the site, which way we go with the agreement, and how we plan for this for the future. One of the little things that's I've got in here is, here in July, we did an adjustment to the budget. And you guys asked me if there was anything that I could, that I wasn't gonna use in my capital outlay. One thing that's come back to haunt me is the county found some of their money through, and they, if you remember right, one of the items was card access, and we had 20,000 in there. The cities and the county had 20,000. We reduced it down to 10,000, and now the county has come up with their funding, and they're asking the city now to put in their share, so I would ask the city and the council to give me back a portion of that money, about $10,000, so we could move forward with the card access. That's another thing that's come up. And then there's a memo of understanding between the city and county on that card access too, so.
Ted, can we back up for a second?
Yep, go ahead, sir.
You said the new buildings in the budget are 1.8 and 2.7, that is looking to the future?
Yes.
What are they for?
Right now, we've identified there's not enough space for all the trucks and the equipment that's down there, as far as even the county side of it. Things have gotten bigger and more equipment. And that's what the 1.8 was, the main building. And then the other was the additional cold storage, and the salt sand building was 2.7. That's what those two things were identified as.
Okay, and I am guilty of, to date, I still haven't toured all of our buildings. But what are they, what's in them? Is there any use?
Everything's full. If you go down there.
Is it full of usable stuff? though,
Yes,
that
it's all,
you're
it's
turning?
not, nothing that we're surplus. It's the county has, they've got their bits and pieces. We've got our bits and pieces that go on this piece of equipment or that piece of equipment. The mowers that we use in, whether it's on the trails or the roads or the parks, they've got some stuff that's down there, but everything is usable. Nothing is surplus.
I think you should make sure you guys all go out and look in those buildings.
Yeah, I
A
can't.
couple
believe I haven't
buildings are
done
full of junk. That's just my personal opinion. Like there's old turnout gear in that one shed, right? And then there was some, I don't know what else was in that shed, I can't recall now, but there was really nothing in that shed that was, that you were ever gonna use. I think it was the red shed, if I remember.
No.
I don't know. There's turnout gear in there that never can be used. I don't know why it was kept, and,
Yeah.
yeah, there is.
There's part of it's turret gear and hoses.
That's what? Well, it's been there, I don't know, was that a couple years ago when we looked? Some of it's gone?
There's still stuff there.
Yeah, I'm thinking you should go out and look at
There's
those
fittings and
sheds.
stuff and light bars and
Yeah. you'd be
there's hoses.
surprised.
There's stuff I've just been storing.
Give it to Ted to store.
It's kind of like and this is a touchy subject, but I'm gonna bring it up anyway. The city hall sign. I did not bring up your impound yard. I want his impound yard out of my sight.
He must be guilty. Right away, he looks up.
Well, today he's got 10 vehicles down there. Some of them have been there almost 10 years.
Yeah, why? Are those forfeiture?
Okay, and I'll drop it there. But then I've got,
I
other
actually
things-
had someone ask me about those vehicles and
Yes.
why they're sitting there.
I had a lady say that it's an eyesore. So, anyway,
I tend to lean that way.
we have some things, there was some challenges in the buildings and, where we're gonna go from here. We just want everybody to be aware and thinking of these things and where we're gonna go in the future. We still have costs with our wastewater plant that are gonna be coming up. As we've grown and as we grow, we're producing more biosolids today. Right now, we're still hauling to Pine River. Again, the state says it will come to an end. They're not telling me when. And they'll give me some time when it does come to an end. But there's going to be another cost there. Our treatment plant right now is working exceptionally well, is doing quality, highly quality water that's coming out of that plant as of today, so.
Ted, I just want you to be sensitive also, as we will be, but this city, going back to the last 20 years, the graph is going on everything.
Oh, yes,
You
yes,
know.
sir.
And we do have a a certain amount of space, a certain amount of miles of road, a certain amount of stuff to mow, so let's all just be conscious of what we're acquiring.
Yeah, we're not, things that we're purchasing or we've asked you to purchase.
Let's get back to you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we brought up the issue, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's yours,
Yeah.
to talk about with capital plans. You know, Ted's assured me that if we had the building and it was all ours, the ones the trucks are in, we'd have plenty of room. The other thing that came up was, you know, talking with the county representative was, you know, is there some state of Minnesota land where we could do a land swap with the DNR to get some, where the county could do do a land swap and put up a new building with their own stuff in it, and they would still be on the same general site. The advantage of being on that site is unique in the county. It's the only off-site facility maintained by the county. Now, they have a couple other garages around the county in certain locations, like in Pine Center, there's like 2 guys that plow snow on that edge of the county and some other places. So they're not interested in, my takeaway was they're not interested in removing themselves from Cross Lake. They're just trying to find the best solution that works for everybody. Because remember, we've got the fuel depot there. You know, the sheriff refuels there, and so do the other county trucks and state patrol and all that other stuff. But for purposes of this budget to get through, you know, what Ted is asking for, what I'm hearing Ted ask for is to get some money back. The 10,000. Now, the county's position on the card access system that they're trying to install is they're going to go with Midwest, which is compatible with what we use here in the city. And their position is, hey, it's your building, we're leasing it from you. You should be responsible for the security of it. And so we need to work through those details, whether it's something we take in-house or who actually does that work. Those are all things that have yet to be worked out. But the important thing is that we have to have you know, additional budget authority to spend the money to get this done as Ted's requested, and then to enter into a use agreement for the card access system that, hey, it's our system and we're letting them use it, essentially. Correct, Ted?
Will that be the equivalent system to what's here and what's at the fire department? And the same
Yes.
card can go, all right.
It'd be the same. So if we need to provide access to Chip to get water or get into the building, his card will be programmed so he can swipe it and get in the facility. You'll have one set of cards instead of, you know, a key to get into the door and then another key to go to the fuel pump and then another key to get into the garage as it is now.
Mike, do you know what account we would need to draw that money back from to put it back in his?
Well, I think we would take it out of the money we set aside for the dedicated back to the roads
Then
to do that.
I think we should do that, because I think the access is important.
And I agree. One last question. If the fall of '23, the lease is up, will the discussion start early in '23 with the county about we want more room and that type of deal?
It's already started.
It's already starting.
Started.
Yep.
Okay. Is that, when are they giving you any idea when they want?
They're still brainstorming on their side.
All right.
They haven't given us a
Okay, so.
drop dead. It's just that we know the fall of '23 is.
The lease is up,
Lease is up.
fall
Yeah.
of 23, but there is no exit plan as far as who gets.
No, that's why we're talking about it now. We need to start thinking about a strategy to do that. TJ, could you put up that other file I had on debt levies?
Just, Mike, let me just add one thing in closing on that topic, is I would like to be personally, and I think the council should have a workshop or something in the development of these changes that are coming forward. I don't want to be at the 11th hour coming up here and say, can you make a motion to approve this? I want to know how it comes around.
Right, and that's why we're talking about it now. We still got another.
Okay, but we're not talking
while.
about it in depth, so if
No.
it's a workshop or whatever it is, I'm not satisfied that it's in-depth enough. I don't understand it. And that's why I just want to make a point,
Right.
moving
No,
forward, I
understood.
would like to do that.
Yep, and that's exactly why we're bringing it up now, because it expires in a couple of years. So we can start those discussions and understand what we're talking about.
Then I'll make a motion, we transfer the $10,000 from the account at city and today back to Ted.
I would second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 4-1.
And then the other part was to authorize Mike to sign the letter of understanding with the county.
In regards to,
The security system,
oh, so that's another motion indeed?
yes.
Okay.
I'll make that
When
motion.
do you need that done?
But if you guys agree to it, I'm supposed to go call him and let him know because he wants to get things ordered before prices go up again.
I make that motion.
I'll second it then.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any other discussion on it?
Well, I don't,
Chip, Kim?
I guess I have a question that, can we do it at this meeting? This is a budget meeting versus you're signing a memorandum of understanding with the county. Huh?
Yeah, we definitely want to follow
I
protocol.
would say yes, it's
Particular on a
related
lot
to the
of things,
budget
but-
and the topic we're talking about.
I'd agree.
I think it's a budget topic.
Chip, did you want to throw something in?
Yeah, I just, I mentioned hose testing. We tested our hose last week, and every year in the budget, I budget for about $6,000 for hose that doesn't pass. Well, everything passed, so I do have $6,217 that I won't be spending.
Okay.
So you're going to give that to Ted, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember that.
Thank you, Chip.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on it?
Well, the lighting is under budget though, for the Public Works by 9,000. You take it from there, right? Right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So
And from Chip.
the balance of it, but there's lighting that is under budget for 89, and you're not going to do lighting anymore this year?
The
Okay.
county has not indicated anything about lighting this year.
I'm sorry, 85. I said 89, 85.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so the screen you're looking at, I get a lot of questions on what is our debt levy and how are we paying for our bonds? Now, if you see, you get out there to if we start in 2008, that's really the early years of the sewer plant construction and road projects when the bond balances were high and we're paying the bonds off. And then we had a period of time where, now this is the levy, okay? Now where the line is one single line, that's gonna be single because that's what we did up through 2022, proposed 2022. And so as you go over time, if you're not bonding for projects or pushing them to the future, now your levy the levy that you need for debt is going down as those bonds get paid off. And what the city's strategy at that time was, because you were experiencing a time of declining property values, you're trying to manage your tax rate so that your tax rate wouldn't go up on a smaller pie to get the tax on. Effectively, so those dollars were effectively shifted over to the operating side for whatever purpose. When you get into about 2014 to 2017, you see it starts to flatten out and turn the other way because we started doing other projects again, whether it was Manhattan or Anchor Point or sewer project or whatever it was. And then we had to say, well, now we've got the City Hall project and we had to start to levy for that again. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because we have a bump coming up in 2022 budget cycle for 2023 and 23 for 24, when any debt the debt that we've issued, the new debt, meaning the City Hall and the fire truck, we have to have a debt service levy for. So I can't change that. In any debt we issue to finance the projects that we're looking at right now, if you look at the blue line, that's where we are today if we don't issue any debt. That's what your debt service levy would look like going out to 2020 or to 2034. But we're already in the middle of the project on 66, sewer projects, road projects, and depending on what level of assessments we have and how those bids come in, if I plug a number in there to say if we issue $5 million of debt just to be safe, that's what your debt levy might look like. You might have to add $500,000 to what you currently have. And where the pinch comes in is in 2023 and 2024. So when you do your 2022 payable 23 levy and so forth, there's a bump there. Now, there's ways you can mitigate that. We can plan for that now in the levy process. Now, we've always been able to generate a little extra cash in the debt service because we're required to levy 105% of what's due. Well, we actually get about $103. We actually come in at about 103% over the life, and that's assuming everyone's paid their taxes when you take in delinquents and penalties and so forth. So just kind of a heads up, you know, we talk about this every year, but I thought, well, let's put it down on paper so we can have a visual of what it looks like.
I do have a question
Okay.
about
I'm shocked.
the 2012 series. How come some of it is in general and the rest of it's in debt service?
Because part of it is for there was a refunding bond that was issued, and there was a lease revenue bond that was issued for the Public Works facility. That was refunded in 2012 through an advance refunding. And it was combined with an advance refunding for bonds issued for the sewer construction plant, for the sewer plant, the original plant. So part of it gets paid out of the general fund, and part of it gets paid out of the sewer fund.
But you're paying debt. I'm not quite understanding why it's in the general. Why isn't it in the debt service?
It is in the debt service.
But on this,
Well, we paid it out of the general fund. That's how it was, the city chose to do it at that time.
so it's budgeted through general fund and not through the debt service?
Correct.
Fund. So it's in the general levy versus the debt service?
It's
Levy.
restricted for debt service paid out of the general fund and the sewer utility fund. It goes to two places.
Then the 482,000 of restricted funds for sewer,
That's for debt service.
yeah. Do you take out of that 482 annually, or is that at the end when it matures, and that in 2023, I think it is the last payment? Is that when you use that 482,000?
No, we're using it right now. That was the balance at that point in time.
That was
So-
the balance at the end of last year.
Correct. And we've had bond payments and levy. And some bond payments are made in February and some are made in August. This one is a February-August type of deal. And so you have to have the money in February to make the payment, even though it's due, you have to have it in your previous year's collections to make that payment in February because you're in another year. And so once we get into the final year of both of those, we can identify if those funds, if there are excess funds available in there to be used for other purposes. That's
So
one
did
way
you draw
to
down
mitigate.
off of that restricted funds?
Yes,
For this budget?
yes,
Okay.
yep, for
You'll
both
have
of
to
them.
point it out when we go through it.
Yeah. It's in Fund 651 for that. Okay, so that's just a heads up. So we've talked about a lot of stuff, a lot of things so far. So when you look at this budget, can you go back to the actual budget, TJ? So now I've had comments from 3 out of 5 of you on this, which is great. I love it. I see Mr. Swenson's here. He picked up a budget today, so I'm looking for several pages of questions I can respond to next week. Any questions on the debt levy we're looking at and stuff? I mean, we can have a whole workshop on just how do we do things with debt, which would be really
I guess I'll
interesting.
ask one.
Sure.
Is the bond rates, how are, with the inflation that's occurring at this time, is there anything we can look at and find out where things are going? The interest rates, are they going from the 2.5 to 10 or what?
We're seeing some slight upward movement. If anything, looking long-term in the future is pretty tough to do. You know, I'm hearing, you know, inflation rates, you know, cost of living things, you know, 5% plus in that range. I did look at some recent issues that closed last month, you know, for similar size issues. You know, and they were in that 1.2% net effective rate for borrowing. Now, that's based on the creditworthiness of the entity borrowing it. And we have an opportunity here to combine, you know, a levy, or I'm sorry, a bond issue with the road project and the things we're trying to do in the sewer. You know, we can do some sort of combined issue when we know what those numbers are. Marcia, you have a question?
Yeah, the EDA, do they levy, or do we give them the 19,000 from our general fund?
They have their own separate levy.
They have their own separate
You know, and
levy.
that's
So
where we talk about things where the money comes out for the comp plan work. So we do that, run that through the EDA. So they'll be giving me another number here later, you know, in a month or so on what they're actually spent this year and what they're updating to plan for next year. What I do is I take the cash that they have and look at what they've got for the rest of the year and what they said they need for the coming year and knock it down by whatever amount we need to. But that's the first pass on it. So the purpose of today is to try to give you a real high-level introduction to the budget, to say, you know, our goal here is to come up with the preliminary levy by the end of September. And when we get harder numbers for things on the expense side for budgets, then we can nail those down. So what I tried to do is identify the assigned fund balances that we talk about for capital. You know, whether it's park dedication fees or court fines or donations or whatever it is, or money we've carried over from projects we didn't do, and then I try to build that into the budget. The one thing I did differently this year is I did not make a provision for we're going to levy $458,129 for road projects and then try to figure out how much is left that we didn't do and how much we're going to roll forward. So I took that out. So that's why you're seeing on the budget summary page, I think it's on page 6, where I've got a number in there. Can you go to page 6, TJ? You see a yellow number in there? That's kind of the catch-all number for here's stuff in the current budget that we haven't assigned to anywhere. And that's your opportunity to reduce the size of any amount that you would levy. Okay? Can you scroll down just a little bit on that too, TJ? If you go down to the bottom, now the copy you have, on the lower left in the tan, it says pay for 22. Your copy says pay 21. That was a typo in the original one that I've since corrected, so it'll be corrected going forward. So when I look at what I'm proposing for the current year budget, okay, I tried to stay flat as I could on the operating side and make adjustments for debt. So the changes, big picture, are we needed a larger debt service levy for this building because that went up by $140,175 over last year, and the rest stayed about flat. So even with what we're looking at, you know, your tax rate actually goes down a little bit, okay? That's a real high-level summary. And what I'm looking at is in the middle of the page where it talks about bonds, grant, and cash. I'm saying, okay, we've got new debt of about $5.138 million, and that's a combination of what we need to finance the roads of the 765 and the bonds for the sewer-related improvements, whatever those improvements. You know, and that includes the Manhattan project. I'm not sorry, the Manhattan, but extending sewer up to that intersection. Yes.
I have a question about the assigned and park dedication fees and park and rec.
Sure.
We shouldn't be including those in the budget. You could have it over here on the side saying that we're approving those projects, but you shouldn't have it in the levy for this year because you have assigned, you have 100,000 in park dedication at the end of last year, and park dedication fees this year have to be, I don't know, it's got to be over $50,000. We did 30-some thousand just last month. So those assigned balances, those should not be in that levy because they're an assigned fund balance, a designated balance for the park. So you have them in the levy.
They are not
but I
in
don't
the
think
levy.
that's accurate.
They're not in the levy. What
Well,
I've
they're
done,
in the preliminary 2022.
if you go to page 23,
I'm on page 21. They're in the levy. To me, I would have just put the figures over here and not included them in the levy, and then they would have been, those projects would have been approved from dedicated funds versus a levy.
they're not in the levy. Okay, and let me try to explain that.
On page 21, they are in the levy.
Okay, that's an oversight. That's why I'm referring you to
Okay,
page
so-
23.
You're telling me they're not, and
So
I'm
turn
telling
to
you they
page
are,
23.
and they are.
And I'll show you where they are.
These have to be taken out
Okay,
of the levy.
Let me explain. I'll try to explain it again. That's an oversight. That's the wording that will change. I have not updated that yet. Go to page 23. Are you on page 23? We have $6,964,368 of capital outlay. The second number in the blue column is $106,500. That's coming out of park dedication fees, not levy. The $32,000 for park equipment is coming out of the assigned fund balance for park equipment, not levy. The fourth number in that column is $406,686. That's the money that we were talking about at the last meeting that we were carrying over from 2021 road projects.
The 458.
The 458, that's what's left of it when I project what we've already done to date through July.
And the 89,000 isn't in there.
The 89,000 is in there.
So what we had 458, and we have 89,000. What did we take out of there?
We took out the settlement for, what I did is I said, okay, if we're going to assign things for roads, then let's be consistent.
But you're understanding that the council assigns.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay,
Very clear on that point.
okay, thank you.
What I did was I took everything related to roads, and because there are things for roads, whether it's levy or expense, they need to match up with the assigned fund balance. We've had, in the roads, we had an original budget of $1,473,850. Then we made amendments back in July of $1,325,050. We made budget amendments also to transfer $16,723 to pay for the additional on the signs, because we only allowed $20,000, right? We decided to,
I didn't understand that last comment. We've what?
at
We paid
a previous budget meeting, we authorized $16,723 to pay for the balance of the flashing signs.
Oh, flashing signs.
Yep.
Did we get those flashing signs already then?
The signs are here, yes.
Are they? Okay.
We allocated $203,675 out of that amount to be used for the settlement for the Perkins Road.
Have we paid that out already?
We have not. You would have seen the approval in the bills to pay. we're still working on the legal description with the attorneys on that. So that equals, and so when you get all done with that, you started with $458,129. You had $16,723 that you used for the flashing signs, $203,675 that you used for the Perkins Road settlement. So out of that original $458,129, that gives you $237,731 to carry over.
But you have 406,000 there.
Right, but we had an original budget of $1,473,850. We had a beginning balance of $98,430, and we had budget amendments of $1,325,000. So when you net all that out and see where it ends up at the end of the year, when you're done with the roads, you get $406,000, and that's taking into account the $89,000 for the American Recovery Funds, and I've also listed as separate on page 23 of the budget, the $249,077 that we're expected to get for the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So what's left is what you have to bond for or spend down your cash. Now, the reason on page on the budget summary up in the front, why that on page 6, go back to that, the reason that 591 is so high is because our levy is just slightly higher, our operating expenses are relatively the same, net of debt. That's the number you can use to offset some of the debt you can levy for. Because I did not provide a provision for road projects for current year levy. It just seems to confuse too many people. So we have an assessment hearing tonight. Once we know what those, we decide on the assessments and we get the bids in, then, those numbers will be adjusted again. So there's a lot of numbers in here, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of questions on it. So I'd encourage you to ask the questions, come in and see me, write them down, I can respond to them and respond to everyone. Some of the questions I get are what makes up, if you go to page 7 of this document, I get a lot of questions on how do I combine the numbers in the detail schedules to get to those numbers up there. What makes up all those categories? So the last time we did this, and this is not in your packet, so I'll hand it out, is that detail schedule, and I've retooled my process so this is automatic. So when you look at what makes this stuff up, it's in the blue column. The other things you want to look at is what are you comfortable with for a levy? And I think I get the page number for TJ here. If you can go back to page 6, let's go back to page 5. And if you go down, there you go. The fourth number from the bottom on the right-hand side, your number says minus 1.16, that should be 0.00.
Which one now?
The fourth number from the bottom on the right-hand side,
Okay, it should be what?
0. That was just an illustration to show what the rate would look like if we left it the same and how much additional cash will be generated. So if you look at the bottom two numbers on the lower right hand of that page, if we accept the model that we have right now, your tax rate goes from 30.36 down to 29.2 on the most recent numbers I have available from the state. That will change somewhat, up or down. Just don't know. It depends on what the tax capacity comes out with the actual rates in the end. We usually get really close, but it will change. Not very much, though. If we keep the tax rate the same as we did last year, 30.36 to 30.36, based on projected tax capacity at proposed rates, we would generate the bottom right-hand number, which is $341,037 more than we did last year at the same rate. And $340,000, $595 is coming from changes in value, and $442 is representative of the change in levy. If you look at that for what this model shows, the second gray column from the right, 100% of the additional dollars raised are raised entirely through changes in tax capacity instead of changes in levy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure.
Can we go to the capital outlay projects?
Sure. What page are you looking at?
I guess 15.
Okay. And your question is?
In police, this is for Eric, I guess. Since we'll have 5 officers, right? Do we have 6 squads now?
We have 6 officers and 6 squads.
Yeah.
That's full.
But next, when Sergeant Swanson,
Retires?
and then wasn't there an officer that went to the county?
Yep.
So we're down 2 officers, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
on Tuesday.
yeah. So we're down 2 officers.
Correct.
So we have, how many squads? 6.
6.
Do we need 6 squads?
Are we not going to fill those positions?
Oh, both the positions? I don't know.
I don't know why we
I have, I don't know.
I mean,
I'm just, this is why I'm asking the
Okay.
question is.
I mean, I fully intend to replace those positions once I'm given approval. I guess that's up to you guys. I hadn't planned on or heard any plans to go backwards.
I thought we were going to, like, we were filling in part-time for this
That's
other
only a
officer.
temporary fix right
Oh,
now. It's a
okay.
Band-Aid.
Okay, that's the question is that if we
That was
need,
going to be discussed September 3rd.
Yeah, the question we're doing is to fill what we
I'm
have.
just asking.
Yeah,
for
with
the
respect to
budget.
squad cars, looking out into the future, to try to get a little more life out of them and have less of a budget impact to mitigate the rising costs of squads and how many miles we're actually using with fully staffed, we've pushed out the replacement period from 5 years to 6 years.
Correct.
So we've made an adjustment in our long-term projections to facilitate that.
So what about, how do you handle the assigned balance then in the police department? Since they have $70,000 assigned for police equipment, wouldn't you use that?
No.
Because in the,
What we
like in
do
the
is the-
financial audit, it says we use assigned balance funding prior to
Right,
levying.
I understand what it says. The way what it works for police, the city has chosen to assign those balances for the equipment. And in some years, we have a lot of expenditures and we use all of it. Some years, we don't use any of it, or we use less of it. And what we're trying to do is have a stable levy for those squads over time, so our levy isn't jumping around more than it needs to. We try to have it as flat as we can, so we don't have blips in there. And so one way we tried to flatten that, to your point, was to extend the turn-in period from 5 to 6. So we actually lowered it. So you will see that increase in the year that you buy 1 car versus 2. Because what we've done is we've staged them out so that every 6 years you buy 2 cars instead of every year buying just one. Now, we can change that, but that fund balance will grow until you buy the car.
Well, a citizen could ask, why are you levying another 66,000 when you have 70,000 sitting there for police?
Well, we don't have 70,000 there right now. That was the balance at the end of last year. We've since purchased a car.
Well, 70,179 is what the fund balance is for police equipment fund.
Right, I'm aware what it is. And we're trying to project that out so that when we get to that year when we need to buy 2 cars, we have sufficient funds to do that without having an impact our levy.
But aren't you levying for that anyway? Every year you levy for that 5-year?
I think we should take this as a sidebar because I don't think I'm going to get you to common understanding on this at
Okay.
this meeting.
We can move on.
Okay.
We can move on. Not a problem.
Okay?
I'm
Okay,
not
we're
the
coming
only
up
one with
on
questions, I'm sure.
4:30. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at this. I mean, I think we understand the high-level issues, which we talked about earlier, staffing levels, capital project funding, and debt service levies. You know, where do we want to be staff size? How do we want to pay for projects? And let's start to do some planning, a little recognizing what we're up against in the future. There's a lot of information in here, and I'm sure you'll have a ton of questions when you've looked at it a little closer. And yeah, and I think what we should do, thanks, Dave. If you go to page 1 of this, for some housekeeping. On the previous budget meetings, we're at number 1. This is our meeting today. I'm proposing we have another workshop meeting on the 8th at 2 p.m. It's a Wednesday. That will give you a little bit of time to get your questions to me and then come back with some answers or recommendations and adjust this model. We could set the preliminary levy as early as September 13th, the regular council meeting. Now, the whole idea here is by the end of September to get a preliminary levy set. It's not to have your budget etched in stone. But we do need to set the preliminary levy no later than September 30th, 2021.
September 8th won't work for me. I would like to move it to a different day.
Okay, then pick a date that works for everybody. It's hard to get everybody to agree to a meeting, because we've had so many.
But you guys would miss me if I wasn't at a budget meeting. I don't know. So,
No comment.
that was a joke. I was trying to be funny. Were you laughing?
What's that? So it's the 8th. It's been
I don't care.
decided.
Makes no difference to me.
But Marcia, get your
Slap on the
questions to
face?
me. You know, come in and spend some time with me.
the meeting
Yeah,
afterwards.
but all of you have good questions.
ahead.
I hear from some of you.
Have it September 8th. Doesn't matter to me.
Or around that time, we can do another doodle poll and see what works. That's just a suggestion.
Well, since I'm not going to be at that meeting, if you're having it September 8th, I can't be here.
Will you
For
be
sure,
here on
for
the
sure I
9th?
can't. What?
The 9th?
Yeah, any other day, I can't the 8th. But I would
Sure you don't-
start
you sure you
asking
guys
some
don't want it on the
questions
8th?
then.
Well, you want
Yeah.
to meet early on the 13th, because the 13th is a council meeting.
Yeah.
I can do the day before or the day after. I can't do that day, that's it. So I have a question about fire department then.
Okay, well,
If
let's
I'm
go
not
to-
going to be here.
Let's go to the 9th then. Should we tentatively set it for the 9th? Does that work for everybody? I'm not hearing any no's.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so,
There's a right-of-way meeting, I think, or is the 9th, that can be the second Thursday. Okay, I'm recovered for there, okay. I'll be quiet.
okay. So it's the 9th. All right.
2 p.m.?
2 p.m.
The 27th also doesn't work for me either, Mike, but you guys probably truly won't miss me if I'm not here.
I'll miss you, Dave.
Levy on the 13th, we won't need to meet on the 27th at all.
Yep.
And we usually set it high, or,
Oh,
Yeah.
because we can't go high or later.
that's no reason to say hi.
Yeah,
No, it isn't.
This year, I think it is.
yeah, we've got some challenges.
Tom's got a question. Tom?
So can I ask you about the fire department? Just in case you weren't here or I'm not here. I'm just, I just want to know, and I don't have a problem with it at all, but I just want to understand, I can't find it now, but armor radios, what are those? I'm sorry, but I don't know.
Radios.
Okay, so that's for each individual.
Each one of our members have a radio, and we're phasing out the old ones and buying some every couple of years to replace them.
You
It's spread out over, they're
spread out
$5,000 a
every-
piece.
Okay, and the same thing, I can't find my page.
Chip, how much is each radio?
My radios are $5,000 a piece.
Your
How come I
radios?
can't find it? The other
Because
one
they can get
is
wet.
personal protective equipment.
PPE,
Yeah,
which one, which part?
well, I can't find that page, but I think it was
Page
25, no, it
16.
wasn't 20, it was,
Page 16.
they got me all riled when they wanted to have the meeting without me. No. Here it is. The 11,200.
Yep, we had this conversation before that PPE, you cannot have personal protective, that's our gear.
Yeah.
Cannot be older than 10 years old.
Oh.
So we're on a rotation, so every year we buy 3 to 4 sets.
But I thought we bought maybe 2 sets last year with the COVID money.
We did, so that's why we didn't
Okay.
have any in the budget this year. Because we took it out, because we bought it with CARES money.
It was taken out of the 20 budget, or
Yep.
this year's
So
budget.
this 2021, we were at 0 for that.
Okay, so you would be buying these
Every year it's
every year?
budgeted,
Okay,
so we have a
Yeah, 'cause-
rotation.
And that explains
Unless you want to
that.
buy
thank you, I appreciate
25
that.
sets every 10 years.
Yeah, because we were able
No,
to get
that's okay.
some paid by, with the CARES money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Okay, now I understand that. All right, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and just for your information, we've been working with our software vendor, and Sharon and I have been working with them to try to get a better way to get the fund balances more current, so it's more automated, and we're just about there. So I'm hoping to have those adjusted as far as I know for, through August, when we present the August financials, okay?
It'd be nice to know, I know you went through them, but I wasn't writing down exactly the 458 that was designated, the 89,000 that was designated, and then what you took out of there.
Yep, and that's exactly what that's not going to show
mean-
on the financials. It
I
still
know,
will be a
I-
manual process, and that's every reason to say, hey, can I have 10 minutes of your time? Can we go through this?
So if you could just email that out or whatever, so that
Yeah, when we get
I
that
have
done, we'll do
That would be
that.
great. And then the other thing is that the balance sheet in the financial audit, as long as you're working with a vendor, would be great if you could get that set up.
Yeah, it would.
Okay.
And
Antenna.
we have, do you guys want some bad news? That costs money? Chip wants his money back. He forgot that we have a communication issue, not between each other, but between getting communication inside of the building and outside of the building. Kind of what we had here with the metal roofing and that, so he's looking into some antennas and trying to figure that out. And how much is that going to cost now? He's not sure. But the antenna for this one was about just under 20 grand. Yeah, so. I'm trying to save your road
We don't do
thing,
take
Marcia, but we keep finding homes for it. Any more questions for me? Okay.
No? Tom, come on up.
Promise I'll be quick. I guess I'm talking as a Public Works member. When Ted was talking about, the buildings and what they want to do down there, my recollection of the lease between the city and the county, there is a buyout provision to buy out the county, and I think that was about $2.5 million. And if I'm hearing Ted, I don't remember the numbers he said, but it was approximately 4 million of new buildings that they're talking about needing to build. If the lease is up in 2023 and the county, if you decide to buy out the county for, and let's just use those numbers, 2,500,000, you'd have to pay the county, and then versus if you spend 4 million on these 2 upgrades to the buildings, are we still at 5740 or 4753? So you're going to be responsible for roughly half of the 4 million. So at that point, wouldn't you be better off buying out the county? Yeah, your operating costs would go up, the electricity and that stuff, so you'd have an increase there, but you'd, kind of like the fire department and police and city hall, you'll be set for the next 50 years for public works. I'm just thinking, if the lease is done in 23 and you do think you're gonna go that way, it'd just be common courtesy to start that discussion with the county, so if they have to start looking for a land swap or something else, you're not coming to this time next year and working on the 2023 budget and saying to the county, oh, I think we want to buy you out. You know, you better give them a year or two if you're even thinking that way. And so kind of sticking my nose where it doesn't belong, but if the numbers are roughly what we're talking about, I just wonder if you wouldn't be better off buying out the county and then we're pretty well set after that.
Do you think that number is set in that document?
I believe it was. All those things were talked about, I just cannot remember.
Yeah, it is. There's a method and a process in there to do that. And to Tom's point, you know, that's why we're bringing it up now. Because after talking with the county, I don't think they have any intention of leaving up here. Because this is a good spot for them. They're centrally located and they want to be here.
It really is, and it's a benefit to the city to have the county here.
It is.
So I'm not promoting to kick them out, I'm just looking at the big picture numbers that, you know, what's in the best interest of the city.
Yep.
And hopefully, if you did buy them out, they'd find land and do something still in the area, because what used to happen is the plows would start from Pequot and head toward Cross Lake, and Brainerd and head toward Cross Lake. Now the plows start here, and we get our roads done right away because the plows are leaving here. So, I mean, it's really a benefit to have the county here. So I'm not trying to push the county out. I'm just looking at the big number picture and then saying, if you are thinking that way, it'd just be common courtesy to try to give the county as much notice as possible.
Thanks, Tom.
So that last document I passed out to you, I just got that this afternoon. It's dated yesterday. That is the results of the mold study at the final one.
And the bottom line, is it okay?
The bottom line is the building, the inside building from the garage south is fine with, no.
No.
Already did.
I got one more comment on budgeting I'd like to just throw out, because that's what I do. But I would like us to consider through this process, I still want to talk about Brittle Lane, doing that small little connection. And the property behind Andy's, I think the city has got an appetite for trying to figure out how to get that. So in our budgeting process,
I've got
just
Andy's
consider it.
property identified in there, but I don't have Brittle Lane.
Brittle Lane is a whole nother subject, but it's a small one.
Move to adjourn.
So, I have one more question for Ted. The 175,000, I probably missed when you were talking about all the land on the buildings and stuff. The 175,000 you have in the budget for the land behind the existing shop? We're going to purchase it?
It's identified as future of the wastewater plant. is what was identified in the long-term plan. This goes back to 20 years ago, was identified. And before he, he's expressed interest to sell it to us, and I just thought, well, maybe we want to move forward and get it done with.
Do we need it?
Yeah, I agree.
As part of the treatment plant, you're gonna need it, yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's been identified even by Bolton and Mink as part of the future needs.
Yeah, we've been looking at that for a number of years now, and there's a individual that's living in there that's not ready to live somewhere else. And that's why we have to keep that end of the plant open, so he has access to his property, because he has to cross through ours to get into his.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay?
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.